Hi, today I am giving my review of the book Poet Anderson of Nightmares by Tom DeLonge and Suzanne Young. This is the first novel in a young adult science fiction series. There are some other books to go along with it as well, and I'll go into the other media associated with this franchise later in the video. So this book is about a teenage boy named Jonas, and he has an older brother named Alan. He and his brother are lucid dreamers. So the characters in this world live in like the real world that we live in, but when they go to sleep, they go to the dreamscape, the dream world. And because he and his brother are lucid dreamers, they're aware that they're dreaming and they're able to control certain things about their dreams, and they used to dream a lot together and figure out the different things they could do, like could they make certain objects appear by thinking about them, and what could they control about the environment around them and things like that. However, their parents had passed away and now they are living on their own, and they go from place to place trying to see what they can do to just live and survive. Their parents were not very wealthy, and especially now that their parents are gone, they are struggling financially. So they're just doing what they can, and when they're on their way to a new job opportunity, they get into a car crash and the older brother Alan gets into a coma. Because Alan is in a coma, he is asleep. So Jonas wants to go to the dream world, which he can do easily as he sleeps regularly, and try to find him. However, there is the interesting thing in that ever since their parents died, Jonas has not been able to remember his dreams. However, we as the reader get the cool experience of being able to remember them because we read them. So Jonas wants to find Alan in the dream world and help him wake up, but he doesn't know where exactly he is or how to find him. The dream world is pretty elaborate. It's kind of complicated, but I think the characters do a good job at explaining it and how it works. There is also the fact that the dream world is not safe. When these characters dream, they can actually be in danger because if you die in the dream world, you die in real life. So that makes the situation with Alan even all the more dire. And this isn't just about Jonas trying to find Alan in this dreamscape. There are also a lot of threats in the dream world. There are night terrors, which are basically the manifestation of someone's nightmares or worst fears. And there are night stalkers, which are these other creatures that can terrorize people. And there is REM, or REM. It's in all capital letters, not sure how it's supposed to be said, but he is basically like the dark overlord of the dreamscape. So Jonas is trying to evade them and potentially fight them if needed, all while in the process of trying to find and save his brother. So there's a lot that he has to deal with besides just going to sleep and exploring the dreamscape. Besides things like the night stalkers and night terrors, there are some other things as well, but these are what the humans are, like the people in the real world when they go to sleep. Some people have certain titles, some people are just regular people, they don't have a specific title. But then some people like Jonas are poets, which is in the title. Whenever he is in the dreamscape, he is called poet. And a poet in this world isn't really like someone who writes poetry. The role of a poet is to guide a lost dreamer, basically a regular person who doesn't have any sort of special ability in the dream world, back to a safe place, or sometimes people can get in each other's dreams. There are also dreamwalkers. Dreamwalkers are guardians for lucid dreamers. So Jonas, or in the dreamscape, poet, has a dreamwalker. So some people have these different titles, but as I said, not everyone is a lucid dreamer, so not everyone is aware of everything going on, and most people are just going about their lives in the dreams. And when it comes to being a poet or a dreamwalker, it's not a thing that people like choose to become, they just are. They don't like study to become one or choose that as a career path. So before reading this book, I thought it sounded pretty interesting. Dreams are definitely something I'm interested in and would like to learn more about. And this book definitely explores that, as some of it is rather contemporary and just takes place in the real world, where Jonas is navigating his life, school, visiting Alan, as well as starting his new job, which was where Alan was supposed to work. That was the job opportunity they were on their way to when they got in the car crash, which was at a hotel, and Jonas ends up working there instead of Alan. So he's trying to navigate and get through those parts of his life so that he can survive and take care of Alan's treatments. And as I said, they are struggling financially quite a bit. Like, Jonas does not even have a phone of his own, so yeah, he's not doing too great. So I was excited to see what the authors would do with the concept of dreams, if they would be trying to make any sort of statement about them. I thought that the dream world was interesting. I especially thought it was interesting how people could interact in the waking world and then in the dream world, or the other way around. And then sometimes, like in Jonas's case, they would not remember, but we as the reader would get to see that. And oftentimes people are very different in the dream world. Like whenever Jonas is in the dream world as poet, he has this particular outfit. He's got like a suit and tie, and a bowler hat and an umbrella, whereas when he's in the real world, he's usually just wearing regular teenage boy clothes. I enjoyed some of the settings in this book, like the dreamscape, and the hotel is a pretty big setting in the book, so I enjoyed that as well. I think I always enjoy hotel settings. I don't think I've read many, if any, other books with that kind of setting, but I know I enjoyed it. I liked a lot of the vibes about this book, like there's a lot of rain, definitely a lot of intense emotions. So with the things going on and the way everything was set up, at the beginning of this book, I was pretty invested and curious. Now we're going to get into some different aspects of this book and how I felt about them, like the characters and the action and things like that. I liked this book and I liked a lot of things about it, but unfortunately I did not absolutely love it. There were some things I didn't like about it as much, and I don't think that this book was great or amazing in my opinion. Of course, if you read this, you can let me know your thoughts and I'd love to hear it. But yeah, I unfortunately didn't love this. I definitely wanted to, and I did still like it, and I definitely see the vision, and I don't think that it was meaningless or pointless. Plus, this is the first book in a series. It might get better. I definitely didn't feel that this book, wasn't about anything. It was definitely about some things, which we'll get into, so that's important. So at least it had some meaning rather than just being a story. So let's talk about the characters. So some of the characters I liked, such as Jonas, the main character. I liked him. He was very emotional, very much a brooding, angry teenager, but he also definitely was very sensitive and caring and very determined in a lot of ways, especially to save his brother. I loved the brotherly relationship, and even though Alan is in a coma for all this book except for the very beginning where the car crash happens, you still see flashbacks and you get to see what their relationship was like and how they were different but how they worked together well. And so I enjoyed their relationship, and I could see that Jonas was definitely very caring and very determined to save him. But the relationship was also, I think, a realistic sibling relationship. Like, they would make fun of each other and sometimes get aggravated with each other, so it was pretty normal, I think. So I liked Jonas and a few other characters, but unfortunately a lot of characters I just did not feel that I cared about very much, and that's unfortunate because characters are definitely very important to me in a book. So let's get into that some more, especially a lot of the Dreamwalkers, because there are a few of them, and a lot of them just, I felt I didn't know very well. I didn't know their personalities very well. They were all kind of similar, and it seemed that a lot of their character was about looking cool and acting cool and being tough and kind of maybe abrasive is the word, things like that, and I didn't feel that they were super developed. Some of them were a little, but sometimes I felt a little confused at who was who, or kind of just viewed them all as the same. And yes, they were all part of the same group of Dreamwalkers, but a lot of them just felt kind of the same, and their only distinguishable traits besides their names seemed to be things like one of them had a certain accent, one of them had another, one of them was a woman, things like that. And I felt that some of the characters in this book were kind of cliches and maybe stereotypes, not when it comes to things like race or gender, but just when it came to their roles as characters. There were some characters I found interesting, but we just didn't see very much of them, which was a bit disappointing, especially when a character is introduced and you think that they're going to be a big part of the story and then they're just not. However, this book is a series, so maybe the characters will hopefully be a bit more developed in the second book. But still, I feel that with this book being about 350 pages, it absolutely could have been done. I don't feel that there wasn't enough room. In fact, with the page count, I sometimes felt that the wrong things were focused on, or I didn't like the way certain things were handled. And we'll get more into that when I talk more about the relationship aspect of this book. So yeah, the characters were just okay. A lot of them I felt had the same or similar attitudes, and after a while some of the language got a bit tiring. But at least I liked some of the characters. They were just alright. Now, as for the relationship, so I mentioned how I really enjoyed the relationship between Jonas and Alan. I love when books have flashbacks and when I feel the flashbacks are appropriately placed. Loved seeing Jonas visit Alan and talk to him. But there was another relationship in this book that was perhaps one of my biggest issues with this book, and that was a romantic relationship. Now, I don't mind at all that there was a romance in this. In fact, one of the things this book is about love. And so I didn't mind it, but the way it was handled, I didn't really love. It felt kind of like it was based on physical attraction, and while the characters did have some of a connection and they did develop an actual relationship, a lot of it just felt like love and, quite frankly, lust. Like, these characters, yes, they're teenagers, but they were pretty desperate for each other. Is it realistic? Yes. Do I understand it? Yes, but that doesn't mean that I have to like it. In fact, some of it made me quite uncomfortable. Now, that can be down to personal preference. Some people will read this and they won't mind as much, but some of the things in the romance in this book made me quite uncomfortable, and a lot of time in this book is spent on that. And I did feel that it was related to the plot, at least, but still, some of it I just didn't like, and I really don't like when characters, like I said, maybe it'll be more developed in the second book, but even with how many pages this book had, I felt that it could have been developed better and more in this first book. But anyway, I don't really like it when characters just kind of see each other and they think they're hot, and then they get together and who knows how far it escalates after that. Not that that's exactly what happened here, but it kind of felt that way. It just feels like something's missing, like something was supposed to happen before it started going as far as it did. And so for me, that's another thing that matters besides characters. If there's going to be a romantic relationship, they don't gotta know each other for years before they get together, but I need like a reason that they like each other beyond just being hormonal teenagers. And although I read plenty of young adult and often don't have any problem with it, I do feel that I would have enjoyed this book more if I were still a teenager. So if I had read it then, maybe I would have liked it a little more and certain things wouldn't have bothered me as much. And a disclaimer, it wasn't like extremely graphic stuff. Just so you know, it wasn't like filled with that. It was mostly the things they said to each other, but still made me a bit uncomfortable. But this wasn't like super spicy or anything like that. But I won't say that it wasn't at all. But if it sounds like I'm saying that this is just a bunch of that, like I hear about some other books, no, not really. It wasn't really like that. So I did not really love the romantic relationship in this book, but I wouldn't say I absolutely despised it. It was alright, it was kind of sweet. So yeah, I guess some of the romance didn't really feel believable just with how much they seemed to love each other, and yes, they were using that word. It kind of felt like, why all of a sudden? Not that they hadn't been through anything together, but it was like just a bit intense considering what the book chose to focus on, and I didn't feel that their relationship was super developed, but then again, they are teenagers. Now I'll talk a little more about the action and world building. Now I'd like to say that science fiction already just isn't my favorite genre. I really like realistic fiction, but that's not all that I read. I do read other genres as well, but I often don't find action super interesting. Not that I never do, but some of the action in this book I just wasn't that interested in. Some of the things in this world I thought were pretty cool, but then some of the things, like the Night Stalkers, for example, they were just, to me, just, yeah, they were kind of metaphorical and there was more to them than them just being some big monster, but I just wasn't that interested in some of the action and some of the fighting and all that. A lot of the world building I thought was cool, but some aspects of this world I was just not as interested in. I just wasn't completely fascinated by everything in it. Some things about this writing style I really enjoyed, but some things I found rather confusing, repetitive, and as I said earlier, a bit cliche, although the book did make me laugh a few times, so that's always good. I think this book had some themes about things like love, emotion, feeling, bravery, determination, and facing your fears, because since dreams are a big part of this, nightmares and fears are a big part of this, and so I thought the way that was done was kind of interesting. And as I said, I was pretty invested and curious from the beginning. Like, I feel like a lot of books don't really become as interesting until you get a little ways into it, or maybe the second half is more interesting, but with this book, I think that I, for the most part, enjoyed the first half more. I think that it started off pretty strong, and then as it went, there were just some things I didn't like about it as much. Now, this video is a spoiler-free review, but my review on Goodreads is a spoiler review, and I go more into detail about certain things that I didn't like about this, certain things about the relationships, or certain things about specific characters. So if you would like my more in-depth spoiler thoughts on this book, you can read my Goodreads review. I felt that the ending of this book left me a bit dissatisfied. It makes sense to not wrap up everything when there's going to be a sequel, but I felt that some of the conflict was just not very resolved. It was kind of a cliffhanger. Sometimes those can be good because you're introducing a new problem or basically solved at least one of the problems before, but I didn't feel that that happened a whole lot with this. While there were some things in this book that I didn't like as much, there were still a lot of things that I liked, and there were some things that I found pretty clever. So while I have read a few of Tom DeLonge's books before, and I'll get into those, this was the first book I read that was written with Suzanne Young, and I had never read anything by her before. And for me, I think it's always fun and exciting to read from an author I've never read before, even though this was a collaboration. It was her being the primary contributor, so I was excited to see what her writing style was like, and as I said, I liked some things about it and then some of it not as much, although she did say that this book is very different from a lot of her other books, which makes sense because the original idea was not hers. So I definitely don't want to judge her based on one book. Plus, this book was published 10 years ago, so maybe she's improved since then. I thought about reading some of her other books, and I had seen around the time I started this book that my library system has a lot of her books, and then I looked again after I was done with this book and saw that a lot of them are series, and they would have like books like in a 6-book series, books 3, 5, and 6 or whatever, something like that, available, and not the others, and so it was a little complicated. So at the moment I do not have any plans to read any of her books that are outside of Poet Anderson, but if you have read any of her books and enjoyed them and you think I should read them, then let me know. You can recommend them to me, but I don't want to buy any others. I mean, I buy books, but based on how much I enjoyed this, I would not want to do that, especially when a lot of her books are series. I don't necessarily want to buy a 6-book series, but I also don't want to buy even just the first book in case I don't like it as much. I would have checked out some books from the library, but they had a lot of incomplete series. The other books from Tom DeLonge that I've read so far were written with A.J. Hartley. Before reading this, I read Trinity, and I really loved this one. I think that's my favorite book of his, from both these authors, that is. So I really enjoyed this one. And I've also read Secret Machines, and it's been almost a year since I've read these two, but I remember enjoying these quite a bit as well. So I have read only one book of Suzanne Young so far. Compared to A.J. Hartley, I've read 4 of his books and have recently started reading my 5th book of his, A Planet of Blood and Ice, the first book in the Cathedrals of Glass series, which is another To the Stars project. So I'm thinking maybe I enjoy A.J. Hartley as an author more, but I also, before saying that, would want to read something from Suzanne Young that is her own idea to make a fair comparison. I'm just sharing my experiences from what I have read so far, having read more of A.J. Hartley's work, and so far always enjoying everything that he's written. I'm really enjoying this so far. It's pretty interesting. However, it is possible that maybe I just like A.J. Hartley's writing style more than Suzanne Young's, but I'm not going to never read her again just because this book was just okay. I mean, it certainly wasn't bad. Plus, like I said, there has been time to improve since then. It could just be the story and the genre and the specific things about the story, like how this book may have more action than some other books, just things like that, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad. It could just be less of my taste. So as for my plans to read the sequel, Poet Anderson and Darkness, after reading of Nightmares, I do not feel like I am in a rush to read the sequel. Like with Secret Machines, I remember I started the second book pretty much right after finishing the first book. Some books in a series make me want to continue it right away, and then some I'm like, I could finish it later, and that's how I feel with this one. Definitely will read the second one, but I'm definitely not in any rush to get to it, especially because the first one kind of took me a while. I'm hoping this one is a bit better. It is a bit shorter, so if I don't like it, then it won't last as long at least. But I am hoping to like it more, and I am hoping that the characters will be more developed, hoping that the romance will become, I guess, more reasonable to me. But even then, I'm not against it. I just think the way it was handled was not the greatest. And I also wanted to mention the other media associated with this franchise. So I recently got the graphic novel. This basically serves as a prequel to the events of the first novel, and I really liked the art. I thought the art was really good. It reminded me of manga. So I thought it was pretty nice looking. I may not want to read it, that could be a bit of a spoiler for some of the things in the novel. So hopefully you're not reading the words, they might be too far away to see anyway. But yeah, I just wanted to show you the art. So I did enjoy this. I thought it was nice, especially to see illustrations of what these characters and this world looks like beyond just the covers of the novels. There are 3 comic books as well, but I have not gotten or read those yet, but I definitely would like to. I definitely could see this being really good as a comic series. I'm not saying it doesn't work at all as a novel, but I might enjoy the comics a little more. There is also the Of Nightmares soundtrack EP by Angels and Airwaves, and I like some of the songs on it. They're not my favorite songs ever by Angels and Airwaves, but I do think it is a nice addition to the book. So I will definitely read anything that Tom DeLonge puts out, but I'm also going to be honest in my opinions of it. And so, like I said, I really wanted to like this book more than I did, but I ended up giving it 3 stars, which isn't terrible. It doesn't mean it was amazing, but it doesn't mean it was bad. I feel like bad would be 2 stars, and then 1 star would be terrible, nothing or practically nothing good about it, irredeemable. But no, it's not uncommon at all for me to give a book 5 stars, and I really thought about this, and I kind of had some trouble with that. I wasn't sure if it was going to be 3 stars or 4 stars. I thought definitely not 5, but definitely not 2. I eventually settled on 3, and as I said, I did see the vision with it. I just wanted to be honest about my opinions of it in a respectful way. I really hope that I enjoyed the sequel more, but I just wanted to give my honest thoughts. I liked this. I thought it was good. I thought it had some good themes and ideas. Maybe it was just some of the execution that was an issue for me, and though I'm not in a rush to read the sequel, I am still invested. What happened at the end of this was interesting, and I am looking forward to seeing how it goes. There are just other books I've been wanting to read for a long time that I'm getting to first. But I guess whenever I read the second one, you will hear my thoughts about it then. So there is my review of Poet Anderson of Nightmares, and thank you for watching.